Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto created a criminal organization. When Naruto Uzumaki's dream of becoming Hokage is seemingly stolen from him, he discovers a new path. One even more difficult and harder to reach. With a family of his own making, he will take the world by storm, showing them that rogues and outcasts of the world can stand at the top. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 15, Helping Hands. Rock. A hiss-like growl came from Lord Orochimaru's chamber. One that Kabuto's master had been in for the last 3 days in an unending rage. A slick trail of blood was visible on the stone floor coming to and from the chamber door's threshold. Despite his master's proclivities to becoming an immortal being, the mighty Sunin still needed to eat. A task well above the medical ninja's station, thankfully. The boy wiped the frames of his new glasses. The old ones broke after a very direct and unforgiving strike from his master. Normally such actions were limited to mere verbal attacks. Undertones of battles that the bespectacled ninja thought put them above the common rabble. Apparently he was wrong. After both the vessels that he and his master used to project themselves at their base in the land of rice paddies were destroyed, Lord Orochimaru lost it. He cursed and went on a killing spree beyond anything he had seen the Sunin do in his years of service to the man. It was like some sort of genjutsu was put on his master. One that tore at his very soul. This was even worse than his injuries from the third Hokage, Kabuto sighed. It wasn't like he didn't get it. Losing so easily to the boy he thought was a hopeless loser was certainly a surprise. Even Kabuto felt his pride hurt a little at such a defeat. But, that vessel barely contained a third of his true strength. If he had truly been there, then Naruto would have been finished once and for all. That was what he said to Lord Orochimaru after the fact. His glasses got the response to that bold claim. Apparently Naruto wasn't what he seemed after all. When Orochimaru ended the corpse possession jutsu, he began to writhe in pain. Kabuto had found nothing physically wrong with the man. It seemed to be all in his head. It was there he speculated some type of special genjutsu. Sure, Naruto was the last person he thought to pull off such a jutsu, but this radically new change meant anything could happen. Even if it truly was some form of advanced genjutsu. But the truth proved much worse than that. Whatever Naruto had done to Orochimaru somehow destabilized the Sunin's soul. His actual soul. Like a scalpel of some kind, the blonde genin had cut the spiritual wires that connected his master's soul to the host body he was currently using. Only after hours of careful medical and seal work did the connection between the two return to normal. If he hadn't, his master would have likely needed another vessel after only a month since his last transfer. Something he knew wasn't possible without killing Orochimaru. It was then Kabuto could understand the man's rage, at least until now. It was a waste of time to just sit on this. He needed to set his master straight before anyone caught on to their location. It seemed only he had the capacity to think rationally at this moment. Even Sasuke scoffed at his worries before returning to training. The little fool. Lord Orochimaru. I'm coming in. Kabuto banged on the chamber doors. He cracked it open slightly. In the small beam of light revealed his master laying on his back, banging his feet and hands to the ground like a toddler throwing a tantrum. Get out! His master hissed. Kabuto adjusted his glasses. No, it's time to move on to the next base. We can't afford to stay in one area too long. Your orders, remember. Hiding underground. Wasting away. Always the one that had to hide. Run and slinker off. His master muttered madly. He wanted to walk over and beat the man back into his cold, calculating sense. Only the quick reprisal of death deterred such extreme actions. It just left yelling at his master in hopes that his words would reach him. Lord Orochimaru. You're acting pathetic. Letting someone insignificant like Naruto get in the way of a... Kabuto flinched when his master sprung up and grabbed his jaw. A tight clenching was all it took to crack it. Don't you dare speak of him that way. Orochimaru spat. His eyes bloodshot and narrowed to the point of a fine blade. He spoke the truth. The first time I have heard such a thing in my entire life, he was right. Earth. Kabuto grunted as he was dropped to the floor. His master stood up straight, pulling back his chaotic black hair. Kabuto watched silently as his master stared off into space. Not a word was uttered, yet behind those yellow eyes had the same look as when the man typically made a breakthrough of some sort. Usually in some type of research. Such an epiphany from a simple fight seemed a tad extreme for Kabuto to admit. Kabuto. Orochimaru poked quietly. Yes, Lord Orochimaru. His master looked down at him. The look of madness waning, and in its place seemed to be an almost soulless void. Like there wasn't anything within the vessel before him but empty space. I have decided there's to be a change of plans. A change of plans? What do you mean? His master strode forward. A sickening smile stretching across his face. I have decided that my goal for immortality will have to be put on hold for the moment. Kabuto blinked. Okay. Does this mean we're going after something else? Coo. Yes. We're going after everything. No more hiding. Naruto will reach the top over my dead body. Naruto tapped his lips. He was currently facing a dilemma. Typically this would be a simple choice, but given this was his first stop his journey, he wanted to commemorate it with something special. Not some simple menu item. No. Something he would remember when he was decades old. From the way the owner was tapping his fingers, it would seem he was taking that long to order. Have you decided yet? The ramen chef asked impatiently. I know I want an extra egg in it. Great, that just narrows it down from everything except the side dishes. You know I close in an hour, right? What? It's barely 8 o'clock. How do you stay in business with such terrible hours? Naruto complained. The grizzled man crossed his arms. Clearly not impressed by Naruto's whining. By having patrons who know what they want to order. Grumbling at the man's poor hospitality, Naruto threw his menu down. Fine, just tell me what's the best ramen you have. The land of rice paddies is famous for its specially grown Menma bamboo shoot ramen. Many come far and wide to try it. The owner said proudly. Excellent. 5 bowls please. With an extra egg. Naruto cheered with excitement. He had never heard of ramen like that before. Whatever it was, it sounded delicious. The boy could barely contain his excitement. He turned to his 2 compatriots who sat on the other side of the table. Both with awkward smiles on their face. So what are you 2 gonna get? Just a bowl of the same is fine, Sasami said to the owner. I will get the same please, the mystery sandy-haired blonde said. Excellent. Your orders will take a few minutes. The owner replied as he took the menus, giving a small nod before walking back to the kitchen. Naruto shifted in his seat. They had found a nice restaurant in a small town near the border. Nothing fancy about it, but it had that cozy and restful feeling that any traveler would want to tuck into. It also provided a dry space to get out of the downpour that came on them a few minutes ago. Perfect timing in Naruto's book. Seeing as they had a moment, now seemed the best time to find what this guy needed help with. He hadn't spoken much about this thing he desperately needed them for. All he said was that lives were at stake and that he had no one else to turn to. Naruto hadn't been too sure about it until Sasami fluttered her eyelashes at him. Next thing Naruto knew, he was taking a detour from his pre-planned travel path. Quite mysterious. Naruto took a sip of his tea. So what's the deal here? You said people are in danger, but you haven't even told us your name. The boy looked somber at the question. Not meeting his eye, the mysterious boy spoke. I don't remember. You don't remember your own name? Sasami asked. I remember there was a town near the border in the land of rice paddies. They were attacked by bandits. During the battle I tried to stop them from hurting the villagers. But I fell off a cliff into the river below, erg. The boy clutched his head in pain. Sweat trickled down his forehead as he gasped for breath. Please, there is no need to push yourself, Sasami soothed. She placed her hand on the boy's back to keep him from falling over. Let me guess, that river swept you all the way to me, right? Naruto offered. I don't know what happened after. Even now some things I should know seem to have disappeared from my memory. I remember waking up at that clinic. The doctor said you helped me. Though he tried to keep me there, I went to search for you. It was only from a distance, but I saw your battle. You're strong and I. Easy, Naruto said calmingly, take a breath. I get the gist of the situation. Have no worries, Naruto-kun is incredibly strong. Sasami chirped. He even was able to defeat Orochimaru of the Sannin. Naruto caught the look of utter shock in the mystery boy's eyes. Clearly he knew of who Orochimaru was and just how strong the rumors made him out to be. Naruto couldn't place it, but there was something off about this whole situation. He can remember how he was swept away but not his own name? Strange. Then I am truly fortunate to have your help, the boy spoke, bowing his head, you have my undying gratitude. Naruto pushed his suspicions aside. Worrying about it now wouldn't do any good until he had more information. Plus he couldn't really be bothered when he was craving for ramen. The scent wafting his way was enough to storm the kitchen. Only the owner popping out with his order was enough to settle him. Yeah, don't worry about it, Naruto muttered distractedly. But we still need to call you something. Sasami nodded. You're right, Naruto-kun. At least something until you can remember your real name. Here is your order. The owner said, placing a bowl in front of each of them. Your other bowls will be done soon. Naruto was almost drooling at this point. The strong scent of the pickled menma on top was sending his senses into overdrive. An idea hit him like the ramen's strong and delicious scent. He smirked at his cleverness. How about menma then? Seems like a good name to me. The mystery boy frowned. Menma, huh? I guess it's as good a name as any. Sasami didn't seem to be a fan of it. Naruto, you can't just name someone after a ramen topping. Naruto laughed. Quietly saying thanks before breaking his chopsticks. He picked up the fish egg placed on the edge of the bowl, holding it close to his eyes. Named after a ramen topping, huh? Story of life. Tsunade slammed her hand down hard as she finished stamping her last document for the day. She rolled her shoulder, tossing her official seal to the side. It didn't take a medical master to know that repetitive motions with little to no movement weren't good for the joints. Even with her age-defying jutsu, there were just things that chakra couldn't fix. But some sake could. Shizune. She called out. By chance the door opened, revealing said assistant. With another stack of papers in her hand. It was a miracle it didn't all fly away from a sudden gust of wind or knocked over from hitting the top of the door. Tsunade couldn't even see Shizune's face. Slam. Shizune dumped the massive stack in front of her desk. The look of satisfaction on her assistant's face only made Tsunade want to deck her. Excellent timing, milady. Now that you've finished that pile, we are only 2 weeks behind. If we push through it, we can probably be caught up in a week. Tsunade hated how perky and upbeat Shizune's tone was. Like the young woman didn't understand the concept of putting things off until tomorrow. There was wisdom in taking moments to rest. Her decades of experience being a pillar of her discipline and maturity. Not a chance. I'm hungry. I'm tired. I want to go drink. The Hokage whined. Please, milady, I know you have been working hard, but a lot of people need your approval on these matters, otherwise things could get worse for the village. If things get worse means that there will be more. Tsunade slumped back into her chair. A loud inaudible groan caused the windows to vibrate. More work, Tsunade bit out. She really hated this. It seemed like that's all she did lately. It seemed after nearly 2 decades of frolicking around without a care that she had actually grown attached to being lazy. Now the good life was over. All that was left was reading forms and stamping documents for people who seemed like they couldn't wipe their own asses without her help. She eyed the clock on her wall. It was nearly 7 p.m. The time where most shops would be closed except for the more relaxing establishments to be in full swing. Nothing ever beat sitting in front of a slot machine for hours just mindlessly pulling the lever while someone brought you free drinks. Tsunade couldn't imagine a better way just to relax. Plus, in her professional medical opinion, overworking could lead to stress and health-related issues, so it was best just to leave things until morning. A few hours wouldn't kill anyone and would help her work harder tomorrow. It was decided. Nope. Office is closed for tonight. Tsunade ordered. Unless something is on fire I can't be reached. Her apprentice huffed. Lady Tsunade. You can't just blow off work. You're not some drunken gambler anymore. Tsunade bolted up from her chair. Her voice filled with determination. Shut up. I am the Hokage. So when I say we are closed, then we are closed. Whoever has a problem can wait until morning. I'm afraid I can't wait until morning, princess. Aie. Her apprentice let out a screech as a large figure appeared behind her, nearly squeezing the life out of Taunton, who jumped in her arms. Even Tsunade flinched. She was normally hyper-aware of who and what was around her. Small details came to her naturally as part of her main profession, but she never even got a blip of the tall man in front of her. She screwed her eyes at the red houri and wild white hair. Anger then hit her faster than her initial shock. It seemed the fool she had been looking for just showed up unannounced. Jiraiya. Where the hell have you been? Tsunade reared her fist back. She would give this idiot a lesson he wouldn't forget. Leaving so suddenly without telling her just before the Naruto incident fell into her lap like scalding hot tea. Oh, he would feel much worse after she was done with him. Her fist blasted forward, inches away from pulverizing the perverted fool into a bloody heap. At least that's how she perceived it. Faster than she had ever seen her teammate move before, his hand gripped her wrist. A sharp tug pulled her forward as Jiraiya grasped her shoulder tightly in his other hand. She was left wide-eyed and stunned at this sudden turnaround. Tsunade. Tell me what happened. I need to know. The sense of desperation in the man's voice was evident. Worse was the look of pain in Jiraiya's eyes. It was chilling to see such orbs on the man who seemed to shrug just about everything off. Not even on the verge of death had he shown such despair. She pulled her hands away, adjusting her blouse as she turned back towards her desk. Tsunade let out a visible huff to hide her shock behind the typical indignation she normally showed towards her oldest friend. You're one to talk. I should be asking where you have been. I sent out countless trackers trying to find you for the past month and only now you turn up. I was busy tracking down Orochimaru, Jiraiya began. His base was a very well-guarded secret and only recently was I able to uncover it. This piqued Tsuan's interest. Since Orochimaru had propositioned her to heal his chakra network from her sensei's jutsu almost 3 months ago, she hadn't heard a peep out of him. The Sasuke incident was his only major power play that had any real connection towards the snake. Any information now could prove useful in finding said Uchiha. And? What did you find? Jiraiya shook his head. He was long gone. Used the local ninja as pawns for his games and was hell-bent in capturing Naruto. Together we were able to dash. Wait. Are you telling me you found Naruto? Tsunade shouted. Jiraiya frowned. Found him? What the hell are you talking about? Just what the hell is going on? Tsunade fingers curled. Clearly he has no idea what happened, she realized. It was best to start from the beginning and then add whatever intel Jiraiya had. This wouldn't be a pleasant conversation though. Especially as it would be the full truth. The incident happened right after you left. She went into detail of the events that happened following the Sasuke retrieval mission. The official charges laid down by the Minister of Justice of the Land of Fire with the unofficial support of the feudal lord. Her initial suspicions of some threat working towards getting Naruto and the plan she came up with to send him someplace where they could spring a trap on whomever was responsible. Jiraiya had an unreadable look as he took all this in. She couldn't tell if he was angry, accepting, or anything in between. This was very strange for her. If there was anything you could count on, it was Jiraiya expressing his true Ryo in an issue with his usual candor. Especially if it had to do with his apprentice. So what was the threat? Letting out a massive sigh, Tsunade revealed the said truth of the matter. There wasn't, it was pushed by Lord Hikyu for what happened during the invasion. This had been the hardest to speak about. Her own anger was infused with her words. The fact that this whole mess was caused by some pompous, no-good, noble who thought his unintentional, not to mention, minor, injuries in a war zone wasn't a mood lifter. The man just wanted someone to blame, and with Naruto's circumstances he was an easy target. Jiraiya seemed to mirror her anger in this fact. His jaw tightened and a distinct vein protruded above his right eyebrow. So Naruto was sent to Hozuki because of this lord. Yes. After the Lord Madoka found out the truth, he put in an injunction into the matter. The issue was going to be swept under the rug, so to speak, but what? Tsunade looked to her apprentice, who was barely container herself. Letting Jiraiya in on such an outrageous fact was a blue moon occurrence. She gestured Shizune to say it for her. The girl looked ready to explode if she didn't. Naruto escaped. Shizune blurted out, immediately blushing out how immature she sounded and clearer her throat to regain her composure. I mean, we received communication from Hozuki Castle less than 24 hours after Naruto arrived that he had gone missing. No trace of him was found anywhere. Because of that, the matter is still open and the feudal lord has asked to meet Naruto before doing so, Tsunade finished. Ha 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 ha. Jiraiya howled with laughter, slapping his sides at hearing this information. Leave it to this outrageous man to have anything but a normal reaction. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Jiraiya, this isn't funny. If you know where Naruto is, then tell us. Her teammate wiped a tear from his eye, fighting off small giggles that escaped his throat. It was definitely a painful laugh. Jiraiya's eyes were shut tight as moisture glistened at the edges of his eyes. A more somber look appeared on his face. From inside his haori he pulled an object out and placed it on her desk. I'm sorry Tsunade, but Naruto's gone. Shizune let out a gasp as she clasped her hand over her mouth. Silence permeated the room as Tsunade looked at the object in a heart-rending dread. Her greatest fear being realized as the object said more than 1,000 could ever articulate. It was her cursed necklace. Given to her by her grandfather. One she gifted to her now dead brother and former lover. Now it had claimed another victim. She clutched the necklace in her hands, the pointed edge digging into her hands. Even with her immense strength, even she didn't have the power to destroy such a cursed item once and for all. It was a blight that seemed to do nothing but take from her. She had thought she had found someone who would break that curse. Someone who didn't let anything stop him from reaching his dream. At this moment Tsunade wanted nothing more than to throw up. She felt like a fool to believe that the curse could be broken so easily. Like every other time, reality seemed to respond with a vengeance. Vengeance that claimed Naruto's life. Even as her heart began to break, she needed to do what was necessary. It was the least she could do. Where is he? Tsunade muttered quietly. Beats the hell out of me, Jiraiya responded dully. What the hell do you mean? How could you lose Naruto's body and act so calm about it? Lose his body? What the hell are you talking about? Tsunade's teeth grinded. Her stupid teammate's idiocy seemed to have come back in full swing. Yes, his body, you fool. He deserves a proper burial. Jiraiya blinked, staring at her for a moment. It was only a few moments later did his eyes widen and began flailing his arms. What? No. I meant that he gave me the necklace and took off. Naruto's fine. Better than fine. He's the embodiment of health. What? Jiraiya took a few steps back as she approached slowly, her hands ready to strangle the life out of him for such a misleading and tactless comment. There were limits to how boneheaded and dense someone of Jiraiya's caliber could be. Right now he was nearing that point. Jiraiya backed up against the wall, holding his arms out in a meaningless hope to protect himself. Listen Tsunade, let me explain everything before you kill me, alright? Alright? I have a lot to discuss about him. Things that don't make any sense. Jiraiya. You're dead. Actually, Lady Hokage. I was hoping you could wait on doing that as well. A voice cut in right as her hands neared the idiot's throat. Kakashi. Shizune acknowledged. You've returned. Indeed. Coming in through the side window was Kakashi. He had been gone almost the same amount of time Naruto had been. His independent search from the main tracker teams proved to offer some amount of success if the report she got was any indication. Although she was told the info was on a need-to-know basis and requested it to be presented in person. Tsunade took a breath, crossing her arms across her chest. Her eyes still promised to beat Jiraiya within an inch of his life after this was over. After all the crap she was dumped with, only for him to show up and nearly destroy her with such a stupid comment was unforgivable. Finally. You're late to report back, Kakashi. I hope you have an explanation for that. Just wait a moment, Tsunade, Jiraiya cut in, I have a question I need to ask first. Kakashi, I need to be straight with me. Did you teach Naruto wind-style jutsu? The question came out of nowhere. Said Jonin, quirking his single visible eyebrow up in surprise. Wind-style? As far as I know, Naruto doesn't even know what change in chakra nature is, let alone which element he possesses. Jiraiya's brows furrowed. Are you sure? Did he show any skill with it before the Chunin exams? Yes, I'm sure. Why? Her teammate shook his head. Naruto showed he was quite proficient in it. What's your point, Jiraiya? Tsunade asked. The kid has always been surprising in learning jutsu. Something you and I are quite aware of. Not like this. Jiraiya defended. His skill with it was Jonin level. I don't care how talented someone is, even Minato took years before reaching that point. So I ask you again, Kakashi, are you sure he hadn't been training with it in secret? Kakashi swallowed a knot in his throat, giving him a small nod. I'm sure. Jiraiya dug his fingers into his temples, rubbing them to fight off the clear mental fatigue he was exhibiting. Clearly this was bothering Jiraiya. Any information on Naruto at this point was as sweet as sake, so if it was important, Tsunade needed to know. Just what has you so bothered by this, Jiraiya? Her teammate muttered something. She didn't quite make it out. Only vaguely hearing something about the Rasengan. Looking at Kakashi, she could tell he heard what Jiraiya had said. The Jounin's eye widened, his muscles were tense and showed signs of hypertension around his neck. Kakashi gasped. What? What did you just say, Lord Jiraiya? I think I just misheard you. Jiraiya's eyes turned hard. Skin almost sickly and pale as he was most likely recalling the event. You didn't. I saw it firsthand. There was no mistaking it. Something not even Minato managed to accomplish while he lived. Naruto, he combined his wind style with the Rasengan. No. That's not possible. Sure, maybe someday Naruto may have gotten to that point. But he's only 12. Doing such a thing would mean. Tsunade stared at the two men as they seemed to be having some hidden conversation she wasn't privy to. The two were obviously distraught about this fact. Sure, the Rasengan was impressive for its simplicity, but was adding a wind to it so special? Enough that it caused two of the Leaf's best to go weak-kneed at the thought of it. Shizune seemed to share that sentiment. Master Jiraiya, I don't understand. It sounds impressive, but it doesn't seem like that big a deal compared to escaping from Hozuki. Jiraiya scoffed at her apprentice's apparent naivete. Not a big deal. You do understand the Rasengan is an A-rank technique, right? By adding wind to it, the jutsu goes beyond the master rank. It's certified as an S-rank technique. Forbidden to use at the risk of bodily harm. So tell me, how many preteens have you met that could make such a claim? It was true. Tsunade couldn't think of a single person who could make that claim. It was beyond any stretch of imagination. Especially someone as young and inexperienced as Naruto. If it was true, then it only brought a lot more problems. Was it that devastating? Tsunade asked. Jiraiya didn't reply to her question. Instead he undid his arm guard, showing his bare palm. Just hold on for a moment. I'm still trying to get the hang of it. No one was really expecting what Jiraiya did next. Truthfully, it was the last thing Tsunade expected him to do. From his palm, chakra began to swirl into a small blue disc. It was rough, more of an oval than anything else, but looked nearly identical to the Rasengan. It may have been the same thing. Not for Kakashi, however. The Jonin raised his headband to reveal his implanted Sharingan eye. He looked intrigued by the jutsu, even how similar it was to the original Rasengan. Oh. Its a shape manipulation focuses on increased area and rotation. Quite the novel variation. Jiraiya laughed. Thanks. Although it's nowhere close to Naruto's. The kid combined this with his wind style to make something I never thought possible. Naruto created it? Kakashi asked. There was a clear tone of doubt in his voice. Tsunade couldn't blame him. Creating any new jutsu was a long and intensive process. Even with the similarities, it was still months of development. Yeah, he calls it the Raisin Shield. A pretty poignant name for its purpose. Jiraiya said, releasing the jutsu. But I guess it's hard to believe unless you were there to see it. Tsunade tapped her foot impatiently. She was getting fed up with these distractions. Right now she needed intel, not demonstrations on irrelevant jutsu. Jiraiya, get to the point where you encountered Naruto already. You've wasted enough time. Oh, it's certainly not irrelevant, but you have a point. I guess I should start when I first encountered the kid in the land of rice paddies. To be honest, Tsunade had a hard time believing a word of it. Breaking everything down was difficult to do without completely disregarding the whole thing as some fever dream Jiraiya had during a bad hangover. Who would believe such an completely outrageous tale? It sounded like something out of his trashy novels. So inconceivable that if you met the kid you would think Jiraiya had spoken about an entirely different person. But she believed it all the same. Jiraiya wasn't a man to lie about someone else's deeds. His own, sure. But everything from his tone, his expression, the way his hands trembled slightly from the mentions of how similar Naruto was to Minato seemed to cut deep into her teammate. Like the encounter had been nothing but a bad trip through memories he would rather have forgotten. The debrief was followed by more silence. Jiraiya's last words with Naruto's shadow clone hit everyone hard. Even though they hadn't been there to hear the words themselves, the feeling of defeat was in all of them. It was the part Tsunade had the most difficulty believing, but the proof was in her hands. Naruto really defeated over 100 shinobi? Shizune asked. There was only a small handful that could go toe-to-toe with a special Jonin, but Naruto destroyed them. Mentally, physically, emotionally. I wouldn't have even called it a battle. The kid was easily Jonin level. Jiraiya explained. Stopping that Fuma clan's ultimate forbidden ninjutsu was something only a more powerful jutsu could stop. So many new jutsu, Kakashi observed. Used so meticulously and methodically. It's hard to believe that Naruto was the one who did it. Her teammates scoffed. Everything about the kid was off. If he hadn't called me by that stupid nickname I wouldn't have known it was him. What do you mean? Jiraiya took out a blank scroll along with some ink and a brush. Hastily he drew out a rough sketch of the boy from head to toe. The white-haired man was never the greatest artist, but from Naruto's apparent outfit she understood why they had a hard time finding him. The kid basically went through a drastic wardrobe change. She would admit that unless they were a powerful censor, no one would see any real similarities between the two. Well, at least Naruto had the foresight to change his appearance. His cellmate from Hozuki was found quite easily, Kakashi reported. His description was matched perfectly with eyewitness reports. It was true, most lower-ranked rogue shinobi never bothered to do so much as get a haircut. They are caught quite easily because of it. Tsunade nodded. She already had that information. Mori, a Chunin from the Hidden Cedar village, apparently was knocked unconscious on his transport to Hozuki. His guards never even noticed it happen. The person who knocked him out was clearly using the transformation jutsu to slip in, so a positive ID on the infiltrator wasn't possible. It did leave major questions, however. Why would someone break into Hozuki Castle? Was it because they knew Naruto would be there? That was what Tsuan initially thought until she figured in the time frame. The imposter had been there almost a week before the charges laid on Naruto were even placed. Naruto didn't seem to be harmed by the man, yet was most likely the reason Naruto was able to escape. Was it just a coincidence, or was there something more they were missing? Tsunade shook her head. Speculating won't get me anywhere, she thought. Turning to Kakashi, who had finished explaining the interrogation of Mori to Jiraiya. Kakashi. You said you had something important you couldn't tell me in your report. Kakashi paused for a moment, dipping his head as he pulled an object from his pouch. He handed her a tri-pronged kunai. Wooden grip wrapped around the hilt with discernible seal scripture written along its length. Even someone like her knew what this was. Hell, There wasn't a shinobi alive that didn't know what it was. Minato's kunai, Tsunade muttered. I found it along the beach on the opposite side of the river from Hozuki. There were no scents other than sensei's on it. Kakashi took a deep breath. There were no scents leading to or from it as well. Kakashi. You can't be saying what I think you are. Jiraiya exclaimed. With no real tone in his voice, Kakashi nodded. I am. If you were to escape an impregnable prison using the teleportation technique would be one measure that the hidden grass couldn't stop. Even Tsunade had to agree with that disturbing assessment. The implications of it though were hard to swallow. If taken to the most extreme of logic, then it would make perfect sense. How they were so easily able to escape. Why that person would bother to help Naruto of all people to escape along with him. It may have even explained the sudden changes the boy seemed to go through. Jiraiya stepped up to her, holding out his hand. Here, may as well keep them together then. In his hand was another identical kunai that belonged to the man's supposed long-dead student. The look of emptiness in her teammate's eyes chilled her. Master Jiraiya, I know Minato-sensei was thorough in collecting his kunai, so why do you? Naruto gave it to me. He said he found it in the land of mushrooms. Jiraiya snorted. Pretty funny knowing he probably got it right after he escaped Hozuki Castle. There was a bitterness now in her teammates' voices. This was hard to deal with just as an outside observer. For Jiraiya it was like hearing his son might still be alive. Kakashi looked no better. Now with two kunai from a long-dead shinobi and the boy with the answers to this mystery in the wind. It left them with little to go on. The hardest part for Tsunade wasn't this ghost story. It was that Naruto had forsaken the village. Had the boy blamed her, then she would have understood. The situation may have been too difficult for Naruto to deal with and saw this as a betrayal. Given the words she said in that mock trial, no one could blame the boy. It must have ripped his heart out. But Jiraiya had said Naruto was sorry. Like he had let her down instead. Tensions rising and exhaustion filling her, now was probably best to let things sink in before diving back down. Let's keep this a secret for now. Nothing said here leaves this room. Understood. Her three compatriots nodded. Then you two can leave, she gestured to Jiraiya and Shizune. Kakashi, I need you to stay. You have been gone for a while and you've been out of the loop from your team. Kakashi's eye narrowed. Has there been any update on Sasuke and Sakura's situations? Tsunade nodded. Another unpleasant conversation that needed to be addressed. In her medical profession she had given a lot of bad news before. Something she had become accustomed to. Now though, she only hoped that sometime soon she would be able to tell someone that everything was fine. But that seemed far off at this point. He's fast, Naruto thought, eyeing Menma. The boy was moving at an incredible pace. Dashing from tree to tree with immense ease. Despite his poor complexion, you would never know that the guy was close to death only a few days ago. There was no doubt in Naruto's mind that Menma was nearly as fast as he was without his resistance seals on. A strange development. Naruto glanced back to Sasami. She was huffing with every jump. Trailing a few branches behind them as they moved closer to the border. They were making excellent time. It certainly made up for the detour they took, but even he needed a moment to catch his breath. Hey Menma. Let's take a quick break, all right? The long-haired boy turned. His gray eyes widened. Naruto suddenly found Menma spinning on his heel and blurred towards him at an incredible speed. Tracking the movements easily, Naruto could tell it was him that Menma was running to. It was Sasami. Kaie. Sasami let out a cry as a loud snap from the branch she had jumped to broke. She barely made it a foot before Menma caught her mid-drop. They sat down on the ground. Are you all right? Menma asked. Sasami took in a large breath of relief. Yeah, I am. Look out. The massive tree they were crouched under was steadily falling over them. It seemed it wasn't just the one branch but the entire tree that was falling apart. Naruto blurred in front of them as Menma shielded Sasami. The shadow of the tree carrying over them like the darkness of night. Raising both of his palms out, Naruto channeled chakra. Focuses on the sharpness he had been practicing. The bark of the tree was cut like paper. 2 equal parts falling away from his companions right before they were crushed. With two resounding crashes, the bisected tree left a minor rumble in the ground, leaving birds and any forest critters scurrying away. From the back there were clear signs of cuts running along the base of the tree. Scorch marks ran along some of the others nearby as well. It seemed like this wasn't just some accident. There was a lingering scent of smoke hanging in the air. Something must have been burning nearby and caused this damage. It most likely meant they weren't alone out here. There was someone nearby, he just wasn't sure where. He heard a small tear cut through the wind. Grabbing both Menma and Sesame in his arms, he jumped out of the way as a long rope-like object nearly stabbed them. It was a narrow escape. Landing on another nearby tree, Naruto deposited his passengers so that he could summon shadow clones to fan the area for their attacker. His clones scattered, each going off in a different direction. "Look alive, you two. Seems like we have guests. Be careful, Naruto," Sesame called out as he blasted off. He gave her a quick wave as he vanished from sight. One of his clones had already gotten the location of their attacker. By the looks of him, he wasn't the healthiest looking fellow. Gray skin and a wardrobe you would expect from that snake Orochimaru. Just from his looks, Naruto could tell they were of the same cloth. A very bad day for this bastard and an excellent one for him. He could see the guy poorly fending off his shadow clone with what Naruto realized to be a crude rope dagger. Naruto couldn't help but smirk. He had seen his sensei fight someone using a weapon like this once. Quite sneakily too. Sadly, Naruto didn't have any exploding tags on him, so he would have to settle for the old Fashion way. From the corner of his eye he saw the cloth bend around a tree. The kunai poised to hit him on his right side. Hiding his smile, he waited for the exact moment. The damn thing was basically standing still for Naruto. Right as the kunai reached his side, he grasped it, pulling it in with a fake grunt of pain. Falling to his knees, he was aiming to use his acting jutsu for this scheme. Arg. The pain. It hurts. He still had a long way to go. His opponent flickered to the tree just in front of him. A satisfied smile was plastered on the guy's pallid face. He laughed with his stereotypical bad guy cackling, getting more kunai ready to finish him off. All that was left was the standard maniacal last words. But first he just needed to sell it. "No, please. I beg of you. Mercy, good sir. Too bad for you. Now is your end." Oh yeah. Naruto had this down to a pact. It was masterful. His opponent never even saw his shadow clone standing behind him. It was holding the other end of the rope. Pinning the guy's arm, he began wrapping his startled opponent's limbs up like a hog-tied pig. Naruto let go, revealing his deptions as it was pulled back to finish off his now mummy-like adversary. Not bad acting for single class at the community center, he. He walked over to his captured opponent. Naruto was feeling pretty smug at the moment, at least until the full-size man turned into a loosely wrapped log. "Ah shit. A substitution. He's running that way," his clone shouted. They both bounded after him. The distance was too great to catch up without undoing his resistance seals. Even then he didn't want to stray too far from Menma and Sesame. He had no idea if there were any more enemies out there. Naruto's body felt a jolt. An echoing sound of music penetrating his ears. But it was more than just that. Like his entire body had been given a shot of adrenaline. Inside he could feel his chakra explode, pushing to every limb of his body. With a sudden kick off the next branch, he bounded forward at an almost unbelievable pace. Right now he found himself moving faster than when he had his resistance seals off. It was incredible. His body now moves at a more adjusted pace to his mastered concentration and focus. Like they were both in true synchronize for the first time since he began his new training. It was breathtaking to see the world move at a crawl while being able to move at such a fast pace. Not understanding the how and whys of the situation, he took it in good faith, jumping in front of his pursuee with like a gust of wind. Naruto could see the guy was not too pleased to have been caught so quickly. With his shadow clone flanking the guy's back, he was trapped. "Leaving already? My acting wasn't that bad, was it?" Naruto needled. "Little bastard." Which pushed the desperation in his enemy to the point where he threw paper bombs in all directions. Naruto could already see the guy doing the typical hand sign for the substitution only a moment after the paper began to light up. Cursing, he had to jump away from the resulting explosion. The resulting smoke gave the bastard enough to escape from his sight. If Naruto could commend the guy on anything, it was his ability to make an exit. It just left him empty-handed. "There's always next time," his clone reassured, patting him on the back. "Yeah." He turned back towards his friends. Not far off he could see Menma perched behind some thick branches, holding that weird object he had found on him after pulling him from the river. Naruto now realized it wasn't some simple toy. It was a musical instrument. The sound he had heard came from it, along with that burst of power. Naruto was not unfamiliar with the power musical instruments had with chakra. His sensei performance with the Akainazuma was probably the textbook example of such power. Now this boy had demonstrated something wildly different yet just as incredible in its own right. All the while he could barely play a song on his shakuhachi flute. He couldn't help but giggle at such an amazing technique. "That's incredible, Menma. With just a few notes from your flute and I felt like I could take on the world." Menma looked a little uncomfortable at the praise but nodded all the same. "Thanks, it's called an ocarina. I was just trying to help any way I can." "Well, I guess it's my bad then that he got away. Not like I won't be able to pick him out of a crowd though, hee 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 hee." His joke seemed to be lost on his musical companion. A tilt in Menma's head, all the reply he needed to confirm he completely missed the jab at his escaped opponent's appearance. Naruto sighed. "Some people just don't understand humor," the blonde sulked. "The village should be nearby. I'll go look on ahead," Menma said. Naruto waved his arm gingerly. "Yeah, sure." Turning back he saw Sasami slowly jumping towards him. She stopped a little ways off. Naruto thought she may have been tired but he could see her calling him over. Being very subtle about it too. There was a deep frown etched on her face. Something was wrong. "Naruto-kun, we have a problem," Sasami started. Her tone was filled with bitterness and sadness. Whatever was going on was probably serious. "It's about Menma, I know what clan he's from." Shikamaru stared at the clock. It was early. Too early. The craziest thing happened this morning. He had woken up before his alarm went off. Damn near scared the hell out of him when it went off. Pain in the ass to turn off as his mom usually did it for him. The thing was a complete pain in his ass. Both his alarm and his mom, he assessed. But that was moot right now. This was the biggest pain he would have to deal with. It had kept him up the last few nights. Typically he would rather stay out of things like this but, well, being a leaf shinobi sometimes meant putting in some effort. Especially when a buddy was in trouble. The rest of his loud associates were sitting amongst the seats in his old academy classroom. Seemed like a good place to meet for some privacy on a Sunday morning. His one day off where he was actually allowed to sleep in. Things were just that bad. "All right, settle down everyone," Shikamaru said dully. His friends were chatting amongst themselves. Some were talking louder to be heard. It gave him a headache. "I don't want to have to repeat this twice. This is already more of a pain than I imagined, so let's get on with it. Does anyone have any questions to start?" Lee shot his hand. "Oh yes. I do indeed have a question. Since you are standing at the front of the classroom, do we have to call you Shikamaru-sensei?" Shikamaru had to give the guy credit. No one was talking anymore. Mainly just give the green-clad ninja looks of disbelief. Especially his own team members. Tenten pulling on the energetic guy's ear, chewing him out. The lazy Nara figured they would have been used to it by now, but I guess no eases into an eternal house fire. "Anyone else?" the Nara asked, carrying on. "Yeah, I have one." Kiba barked. "What's the plan here, Shikamaru? I know you called us to talk about Team 7, so why are we beating around the bush?" "We all know why we're here, Kiba," Ino scolded. "It's just what we were told doesn't add up." There was another round of yelling and arguing ensued. Clearly some of them picked up on some of the discrepancies in Lady Hokage's briefing of Team 7. The fact that it was a bold-faced lie was the main factor. It wasn't that hard. Clearly she had come up with it on the fly. Not that they could say that to her face. For obvious reasons. This is such a drag. Shikamaru raised his hand. Again, quiet down and I'll go through what we were told for those who didn't quite get it. The long and short of it is that Lady Hokage lied to us. At least, pertaining to Naruto. How can you be so certain? Neji asked. It's not unheard of for ninja to disappear during a mission. Shikamaru held out 3 fingers. The first was that she told us Naruto was given the mission right after we returned with Sasuke. I know you were banged up pretty bad, but I saw Naruto briefly when we returned. He wasn't in any condition to do anything. Yeah, but Naruto's a faster healer. I've seen him get up and run a marathon after some of his fights, Kiba argued. True, it is certainly a possibility. This brings me to point number 2, the fact he was assigned a mission to a 3-man squad. Shikamaru explained. This had been a very glaring error on Tsunade's part. While 3-man squads do happen, especially now, the conditions are for those who have already worked together for an extended period of time. Otherwise, it's 4 people to a squad. I agree with that assessment, Shino stated, adjusting his sunglasses. Why? Because I cannot recall a time Naruto was ever assigned a squad with Katetsu or Izumo. I know I can't speak for the members of Team 7, but I feel that assessment is accurate. Shikamaru nodded. Correct. Which brings me to number 3, the mission Tsunade mentioned started around 33 to 34 days ago. It lines up with the time I saw Naruto last. The problem is that I saw Katetsu and Izumo on both days. At 9:50 am on the first day and at noon on the second. They were carrying boxes for Lady Tsunade on both occasions. The Nara paid them no mind at the time, but once he saw something it was typically struck in his head. Not hard to remember them complaining about their work either. They were quite the pair, especially with getting easy jobs like lounging at the village gate. He could tell these words sunk into his little class. It was hard to call out their leader for lying to their faces, but after a month of no news and the fates of their friends kept in the dark, it called for more troublesome countermeasures. Sure, Sasuke and Sakura were comrades of the Leaf, but Naruto, he would raise hell if any of them were missing instead. Troublesome bastard. So what are we going to do, Shikamaru? Koji asked. They were all looking at him. Looking for some sort of plan or guidance. He had hoped they could contribute to forming a plan, but given how little they had to go on, it left them to speculate. It was all they could do for now until they had a solid lead. But that also brought up the crux of this whole meeting. I'll be honest, Shikamaru mumbled, staring out the side window. There is a lot about Naruto that never made sense. Secrets that have been kept from us. I know that we're being purposely kept in the dark about them, but, I think we may have to take action on our own on this. He declared unwaveringly. Take action on our own? What the hell does that mean? Kiba asked, speaking for everyone. Many were troubled by the undertone he had implied. Shikamaru reached into his flak vest. He had been very careful sneaking this from his father's office. When he saw it, he didn't know how to feel about it. Shock? Anger? Confusion? More than anything, he figured. Showing it now would only make everyone upset. Given the circumstances, this was certainly a gamble. However, he needed everyone in on this. Only together did they have a chance to do something. He slapped the paper on the blackboard. I need you guys to keep this a secret. Not sure how bad things would be if they found out I stole this. They were probably going to wait until much later to tell us. Shikamaru stepped out of the way. The inevitable gasp resounded through the room. He could see Hinata, who had remained silent with grief until now, begin to weep. The others were facing their own forms of anguish. Not that he could blame them. It was not pleasant to think about the repercussions Naruto would face. The guy was basically given a black mark over his entire life with this. All he could do was to come up with something to help his friend. Before things got much worse. Are you sure about this, Sasami? Naruto asked as they approached their mysterious companion. Said companion was standing on a large boulder overlooking a large valley. They had reached the border with the neighboring lands. A sizable range of mountains and hills separated the nations. Down below was the river that ran throughout the land of rice paddies. The charred remains and decimated remains of what looked like a small village was beside it. There were still small trails of black smoke drifting from the scorched buildings. Menma hadn't been lying about that. It seemed they may have been too late to do something, however. I'm sure. His clan was one of the more notable ones alongside the Fuma. Sesame explained. Her eyes were drilling into the ground. Given the similarities, it was no surprise why this hit close to home for her. Some of them joined up alongside Orochimaru when he came to take over. I see. Menma was staring at the town's remains. His eyes fixed on it like a moth to a flame. Naruto could see the slight trembling in his arms. Slight flexing his legs to keep him from falling over at the devastating sight. Menma clearly looked troubled by this. Pain and sorrow was worn on his sleeves. It was hard to measure just whether Sesame's concerns were valid or not. Menma. Are you okay? Do you remember anything else? Naruto asked. The long-haired boy looked up towards the clouds above them. Naruto, what would you want to be if you were reborn? Blinking thrice, Naruto took in the question. Speaking of hitting close to home, this was certainly something he had spoken to his sensei about during his training. Naruto couldn't help but smirk at his answer. That's easy, I would want to be reborn as myself. Menma's gray eyes met his blue. Even if your life was filled with nothing but regrets. Especially if it was filled with regrets. I have learned that things we want to take back are always there. But it's up to us to decide how much we lose. Naruto walked past the boy, staring ahead past the mountains. He was facing the direction of the Land of Wind. Where his first objective was. I am on this journey so that I can become strong enough to never have to compromise what I hold dear. That sounds wonderful. Right now I don't even know what kind of person I am. I just wish to also live a life without regrets. Then I promise to help you reach that goal. Naruto said, holding out his hand. Menma blinked. Sure, it was a little strange to be making a promise at this point, but since Naruto had come this far, he may as well see it through to the end. The three took a short rest before slowly coming down the valley. The scent of smoke and metal was pungent the closer they got. More trees and foliage had been scorched with kunai and shuriken dug into some of them. On the ground there were trails of blood that dragged across the dirt path. It was shinobi that attacked this village, Naruto realized. He could see his companions were troubled by this as well. Seeing no means to comfort them, he decided it best to pick up the pace. The sooner they had a better idea of what was happening, the sooner they could come up with a plan. Whether it was by luck or some miracle, it seemed that the damage only took apart roughly half the village. The structures that were damaged were done beyond repair. The littering of weapons and debris was much worse on the outskirts than the center. Some of the wooden beams still had small embers of fire burning from the ashes covering them. The battle was recent. Are we too late? Sesame said. Not quite. Naruto replied. You can all come out now. I know you're there. There was no response to his call. It seemed whomever was lurking around wasn't too keen to just go along with his words. Are you sure, Naruto? Yeah. I read a story once that when there's a battlefield with no corpses on it, it typically means there were those willing to bury them. I don't see any bodies lying around, do either of dash. Thwack. Brows furrowing, Naruto could see 4 objects flying towards him. They were thin and narrow, with metal pointed ends. With fletching done on the shafts, they looked like arrows but seemed too short. Crossbow bolts, Naruto thought. He took a step forward as they got within arm's length. Reaching out, he swiped his hand in the air, catching the 4 bolts in the folds of his fingers. Really? Is that how you say hello? Naruto asked. From the still intact buildings, his assailant as well as his allies stepped out onto the main road cutting through the village. It was an easy tell that they weren't ninja. They were all able-bodied men. Some were carrying crossbows, while others had axes and kitchen knives. Their demeanor was best described as angry and scared. Civilians. Most likely the residents of the village. Don't take another step or I'll fire. The lead villager said. He was taller than the rest. Long black hair tucked back by his white bandana. He held his crossbow out threateningly. anger and adrenaline permeating off the guy like sweat. Well, that would be quite the feat when your crossbow isn't loaded, Naruto pointed out. The guy seemed to flinch realizing this. It was sad really. Naruto couldn't help but feel for the man. He tossed the bolts back to him. Here. I believe these are yours. This didn't seem to endear himself as Naruto had thought it would. Who are you? Are you underlings of the ones who attacked before? If you are, then you'll die here. Naruto had seen his sensei in a similar situation like this. There was this gang that hung out in Nagaya who had a very clear and defined territory that they didn't like people crossing. Noriyuki had said in situations like these it was always best to become someone they don't want to let leave. It varied on the situation, but if you understood who you were dealing with, then it was simple to figure out. Not even close. It really is a shame, Naruto said, shrugging. We're bounty hunters who were tracking the shinobi that attacked this village. They harmed a noble near Tetsukiri trying to kidnap him for some ransom. Supposedly they were sound shinobi. If they already passed through here, then I guess my friends and I will try and pick up their trail elsewhere. Naruto turned, ready to walk away after his bold-faced lie. This seemed to drop their guards. The leader lowered his crossbow, seeing that they weren't actually here to harm them. While Naruto did lie to a degree, it served as a good measure of just how desperate these people were. His sensei was certainly right on this account. The untrusting are more willing to believe a man who helps for monetary gain rather than for goodwill. Wait. So you're after those shinobi because they have a price on their heads? Good. Anyone willing to take those bastards down is alright in my books. The ones you're after will be back. Just don't expect anything from us. The leader finished, walking away. The rest seemed to follow his lead, leaving Naruto's group to their own devices. What a friendly bunch they are. Naruto muttered to his friends. I can't blame them, Sasami sighed, especially after seeing this. Menma looked in even greater pain now. Whatever he was struggling to deal with looked ready to burst out at any moment. There was something they weren't being told about all this. Something important that Menma was hiding or just couldn't remember. Not that they could force him to talk though. So then Menma, what's the plan here? It's your show after all. I want to help them. I also have a strong feeling the bandits may return. Menma said. Naruto looked around. It wasn't the most defensible place. Hell, it was positioned in probably the worst part of the valley. Low ground and a river cutting on one side. It didn't take a tactical genius to see that he would need a lot of clones to cover each point of entry. Naruto glanced to his side. There were two girls hiding behind a large rock. One looked his age while the other was clearly no older than 5. The younger one was holding the hem of the dress of the older one. He could see the look of fear in them. Probably scared that they were strangers. If the bandits did return, then there was no hope for them. For the bandits anyway, since I'm here, Naruto mused. He looked to his companion who looked like they were of the same mind as him. Naruto smirked. I guess we should start then. So this is where you've been hiding, Tsunade said, closing the door behind her. She had been looking all over for Jiraiya. Going by all the major taverns and watering holes she knew her friend liked to frequent. To her surprise, there wasn't even a sighting of him walking by. After his debrief, she figured this the last place he'd be. But it was certainly the most telling of his thoughts. The place is a mess, Tsunade mumbled, stepping over an empty cup of instant ramen. Leave it to a little brat like Naruto to not know how to keep his own apartment tidy. She could be a bit of a slob too, but even then there were limits. It didn't help that the complex was older than her parents. Someone really should have condemned this place long before now. Jiraiya grunted, staring off at the wall. She took a seat adjacent to Jiraiya. There were only 2 seats. Notable that there should typically be 4. Not that it was all that important at the moment. I just told Kakashi that his team has been disbanded. Hard to tell what he was thinking, especially after, well, you know. What a disaster this has been. I really wish Sensei would get better to help me. Barely 2 months as Hokage and it feels like it would all fall apart without me. Tsunade cursed. How is Sensei? Jiraiya asked tonelessly. Has he woken up yet? Tsuand managed a small smile. It seemed her friend wasn't all out of it yet. He has a long way to recover. He's conscious only a few minutes at a time before he falls unconscious again. When he is, it doesn't seem like he's aware of what's going on around him. It was a miracle the old man was alive at all. That jutsu, the one that destroyed Orochimaru chakra network, was a double-edged sword. It sent a shockwave back into her sensei that nearly caused the same damage as its intended target. The damage mainly permeated in his arms as they were the point of contact. It was just the amount of chakra used to even make the jutsu work was the main problem. The jutsu had taken almost everything the old man had. The pain he must have experienced was mostly likely immense. If she had been any later in her arrival, any method of recovery would be futile. Her sensei's recovery would take years to properly heal. Even then, her sensei wasn't a young man anymore. The damage was extensive enough that it would hamper his former control and mastery over ninjutsu. With the chakra network in his arms damaged, it was like a musician missing half his fingers. Jiraiya glanced her way. A look of apprehension in his eyes. What do you plan on telling him? When he's better? Nothing. At least until he's fully recovered. Tsunade said, folding his hands together. As much as she joked about needing help, right now her sensei needed to recover first. Both physically and mentally. Dumping the village's problems on him wouldn't be beneficial to him. I don't want anything impeding his recovery. If he knows Naruto has gone rogue, he won't just sit idle. I'll order that it be kept secret for his own well-being. That may not be possible, Tsunade. Jiraiya's eyes became hard. An almost eerie intensity. I left out one thing from my report. Something Naruto said. Rather, something he promised. Enough that I believed him. A promise. The words that followed impacted Tsunade. She really shouldn't be surprised given who said them, but if that truly was Naruto's goal, then things wouldn't stay quiet. Naruto took a deep breath, focusing the chakra in his hands. Sharpness. It was the first of the 5 aspects of wind chakra. Precision was the second. Both together you could shape just about any object into any form so long as both were mastered. He had seen his sensei make lifelike sculptures out of stone just by placing a single hand on it. It was quite the feat to behold. One that probably took decades to master. A feat Naruto was realizing would probably take just as long for him. Right now he was sharpening the ends of the trees they had cut down. The sharpened spikes were fauchion to prevent any who would climb over their makeshift wall. For only using wind chakra they were pretty good. With cutting them, sharpening the ends, and helping to hammer them into the ground, Naruto had gotten good training in. Sasami seemed to think so too. She had been eager to help even as she looked rugged and tired. Despite her size, she was really pulling her weight. I will do everything I can to help them. Naruto smirked as she grunted, helping to position the last spike into the ground. Menma going non-stop with hammering it into the hole. Both of them looked exhausted. But they looked content with their work. He had kept clones running around the area. That creep from earlier had come close to the village again. He ran the moment his clone spotted him. The guy was obviously scouting the village. Most likely staging for a second attack. Not that they had a chance in hell of actually pulling it off. Come on everyone. We're almost there. The head villager from before, Nan. It had initially been just Naruto, Menma, and Sasami building the wall. Slowly more of the villagers began to join in building it. They were determined to protect their home, whatever the costs. More emboldened now that they had built some fortification around their village. They cheered when it was finally finished. Just before the sun set as well. Naruto had a feeling that tonight would be when those bandits made their move. So the timing was good. Ran, the girl he had glimpsed earlier and the younger sister of the village leader, had told them of the poor political landscape due to the Hidden Sound's involvement with the land of rice paddies. As this territory was disputed and it also happened to be close to a gold mine, it proved a lucrative target for these bandits. Leaving them without support from their feudal lord and stuck having to fend for themselves. Strong leadership at its finest. Noriyuki would have been proud. There was another thing that was bothering Naruto. It was how awkward Menma was around the villagers. That little girl from before had turned him white as a sheet. Like her very presence disturbed him. Things were getting tense. Something was clearly going on with Menma. While he claimed to have trouble remembering what happened, the gray-eyed boy clearly didn't have a knack for trickery. Naruto had most of the information now to sort this out. He was still well inside his locus of control. The who, what, where, and when were already known factors. It just left one thing that remained a mystery, rather one person that remained so. He needed to confront Menma on this once and for all. Menma sat staring up at the stars. He had been doing so for the last hour. His muscles still ached from the intensive labor of building such a large wall. While the soreness would persist, it felt good to actually help these people. Like the part of the pain he caused them had lessened slightly. But he knew that wasn't true. Not even close. His head throbbed at the memories. The suffering he caused. The lives he ruined because he chose to follow his clan into that massacre. That little girl, Fuki, she had been there as her father was killed. He turned on his clan in that moment trying to rescue her. Which he somehow managed. But left him falling off a cliff. Even using his jutsu to erase his own memories had failed. With everything barring his own name returning to his mind a few hours later. It seemed to have vanished completely. The only thing that remained blurred to him. Nameless yet still a monster. It was certainly a punishment for his deeds. Now I've dragged Naruto and Sasami into it, he cursed himself. After waking up in that clinic, hearing that someone was kind enough to not only rescue him but leave him with money was utterly shocking to him. Never had he heard of someone showing such kindness to a complete stranger. Going out and finding his rescuer was the best thing he had done in a long time. Seeing Naruto face down all those enemies and protect his friends only spurred his decision to ask for his aid. To use Naruto as his means of recompense for his actions. Yet, by hiding his shameful past, that made him just as awful. A manipulator and a liar. Even as he tried to do good, it still tainted his soul. But soon he wouldn't have to deal with it. He had known what Shien's plan was. Knowing what they would do as a last resort, Menma would stop their plan, sacrificing himself to save everyone. Then he could die knowing he made things right. Menma bolted to his feet. The unmistakable sound of his clan's sound-based genjutsu resounded from the village's newly built front gate. Dashing forward, he could hear the music getting louder. Only as he was a member of the clan did he have an immunity to its effects. The tattoo on his right arm activated to block the genjutsu's effect. It was this realization that made him realize why the memory erasing jutsu didn't work as it was supposed to. Why he still had almost all of his memories. He couldn't dwell on that now. Canceling. Sound jutsu. Pulling out his ocarina, he began to play the jutsu created to disturb and nullify Shien's paralyzing genjutsu. It was recently created in the wake of their clan's fracturing. It was a countermeasure if Orochimaru sent their former members after them. Now he would use it to stop his own clan. Menma managed to break it easily, allowing Naruto to create more clones than he had seen him use before. While the enemy forces had at least 50 in number, Naruto had more than double that amount. With swift work, many of his clan members were incapacitated. This provided the villagers enough time to escape. Sasami led them deeper into the village as Naruto made short work of anyone who tried to cross into the village proper. Menma couldn't help but feel relieved. Soon this would all be over. But it was now time to end this. As Menma had expected, Shien had slinkered off. He could barely make out his former leader as he ran towards high ground. His chest began to pound heavily as he realized just what was about to happen. He needed to act quickly, before it was too late. Slinking off from the battle, Menma ran towards the gold mine. He had been prepared for this moment. Shien had planned to blow up the dam that held the village's reservoir of water. It would flood the valley and wash away the village, killing everyone. Shien had intended to use it as a last resort if he couldn't get the villagers to leave. Menma wouldn't let that happen. He had already placed explosive tags in the mine. It would provide enough force to blow apart the mountain and stop the flood. It required him to be in close proximity to active them though. His last and final act. to give him the justice he deserved. He could see the entrance up ahead, as well as a figure standing in front of it. The black and orange figure stood there, arms crossed with his unique hat tipped low. Menma was stunned to see Naruto standing there when he had been certain that his original was still down at the village. Going somewhere, Menma? Naruto asked. Naruto, listen, I know you have a lot of questions, but right now I need to get through or everyone's going to die. Menma begged. Naruto let out a whistle. Everyone's going to die? That sounds bad. Well, it's a good thing you're here. I actually came here to return something that belonged to you. Menma froze as his former rescuer pulled crumples of his explosive notes from his pockets. Whined a sudden gust of wind, the notes blew away over the ledge, leaving him without any means of blowing up the mountain. It now dawned on him that Naruto had already known all along what he planned. That just made things worse now, as it put the village in danger. Everything he had planned was now in ruins. Everyone would die. Why Naruto? Naruto grit his teeth, his blue eyes piercing through him. I told you that I wouldn't live a life of regrets. Even if you're part of the Shiin clan, the ones responsible for all this, your death would be a great loss to me. You knew I was. Greatly stunned at this, Menma could only tremble. His words struggled to form. It hurt knowing that even after being found out that Naruto still intended to save him, that someone like Naruto would still go to such lengths to save his life. He didn't deserve it. Menma cried. You don't understand, Naruto. I was there when my clan attacked. I was part of the clan of criminals that hurt those people. Seeing that slaughter killed me, I couldn't face it. I was so cowardly I even used a jutsu from my clan to erase my memories. Yet it all came back to me except for my name. Now I'm only trying to find peace within myself. To make things right. To apologize with my life. I don't want to live with this regret any longer. Naruto remained silent, taking in his cries. Letting everything out felt good. Bottled up inside him, it was almost unbearable. He just wanted to make things right again. To make his life mean something. Menma's body jerked as Naruto grabbed his scarf, pulling him close. Let me tell you something, Naruto bit out. Anger etched on his tan face. You think that giving up your life just makes things all right? Not a chance. Let me tell you some, Menma, death is not justice, and it sure as hell isn't an apology. You think being dragged into a bad situation because of your clan makes you an evil person? You're so naive it makes me want to toss you over this cliff right now. What's happened to this village is only a taste of the crap happening around the world. Things that no amount of justice or lives offered could make right. Yet here you are giving up so easily. You want to live a life without regret? Then get stronger so that you can stop things like this from happening. Naruto tossed him to the ground. Menma, for the first time in a long time, felt conflicted about the path he wanted to take. Always seemed to be carried by the world around him. Always at its whim. It was like that even as a boy. This pain that filled his heart still ached. Like a knife that rested upon it, ready to kill him the moment he let these memories overtake him. But these memories, I can't. Listen, Menma. Trust me when I say this, one good memory has the power to overcome a lifetime of bad ones. So I think it's time you started looking beyond the darkness your memories have trapped you in. My sins, the things I have done, can't be truly judged by anyone except oneself. You want to make up for this one bad deed, then repay it 1,000-fold. Menma's hands curled, his nails digging into the rock. Naruto was right. He was only trying to run away again. Letting his own death be a token for some hollow forgiveness he never truly deserved. The things he had done could never be changed. Not even if he died. It would only take away his ability to make things better than they are now. Naruto, please help me. Menma wailed. He. Of course. Naruto said, offering him his hand. I'm going to need your help in order to save everyone after all. Menma took it graciously. How? Can you blow up the mountain? Naruto shook his head. I could, but I'm not going to. The people of the village will need the gold in order to rebuild. But the dam. It'll destroy everything and everyone. You're right. It seems my original has already captured Xian. Sadly, he already activated the explosives around the dam. They are set to go off any minute now. Then how are we going to? Naruto smirked. The old Fashion way, of course. Menma stared wide-eyed at the boy. The amount of water wasn't anything to sneeze at. It would take something as powerful as a mountain to stop it. Menma couldn't even think of such a thing. Can you actually do it? Naruto shrugged. Probably not. I doubt even I could stop a massive lake from being dropped on us. Then how? Menma felt Naruto grip his shoulder. There was determination in his friend's eyes. I alone can't, but with your help we can ensure there are no sacrifices today. He was starting to understand now what Naruto was going to do. Everything right now hinged on him. While Naruto was powerful, he could go even further with his chakra-enhancing jutsu. Will it be enough though? The only reply he got was a shrug and a smirk. Not exactly unshakable confidence. Menma, make sure you give one hell of a performance, Naruto said before dispelling. Right now Naruto was most likely at the front of the dam, waiting to take it head on. It was practically suicide. Not much different than what he had planned to do only moments ago. I'll play with everything I have. There was an immense rumbling. The sounds of explosions and sparks of fire erupted from the mountain. It seemed he was out of time. While he had captured the bandit leader, it seemed that there weren't any methods to stop the tags once they were activated. They were just given enough time to clear the area before they went off. Crude but effective. It certainly didn't make Naruto's life any easier though. This was certainly one of the craziest things he had ever done. Beyond fighting tailed beasts and other giant monsters, this was right up there with the rest. All that water coming down would be like trying to stop a mountain from crashing on him. Anyone sensible would have ran like the wind and wouldn't look back. But Naruto never understood what being sensible meant. Naruto? Are you sure about this? Sasami called out. Naruto laughed like a loon. He. Nope. Not one bit. Is everyone secured? Yes. Everyone's evacuating to higher ground, but they won't make it in time. Ah shit. I would recommend you go with them. At least try to get away, Naruto shouted as he prepared 2 shadow clones. He had only done the jutsu once before. Only by dividing the work between 3 of him was he able to draw out the jutsu to its fullest potential. Staring up the river towards the mountain in front of him. It may as well have been a dinner plate trying to push back a falling house. I'm staying too. Sasami said adamantly. We're in this together. Naruto was about to comment when the memories of his talk with Menma returned. It seemed like his words reached the boy. A good thing too, as he knew he would be doomed right now without him. He. We sure are. Let's get this started then. His 2 clones grunted. Both pushing wind chakra in opposite directions. He was really focusing this time. Building on the rotation to the nth degree. With both hands he formed the basic raisin shield. Slowly allowing it to grow bigger and bigger. The ground beneath him began to give as its size was greater than his own. The massive swirling white chakra humming with its sheer intensity. But Naruto knew it wasn't enough. Even in the dead of night, with only the moon's light shining on him, did he see the shadow of the water. The sound of it rushing towards him with a massive roar of crashing currents. Naruto could barely hold himself straight from the shaking it was causing on the earth. He could feel the drops of water falling on him. The flow was so great it was pushing it at breakneck speeds. Duruum desuul karaith fariaini Is that really Menma? Naruto asked aloud. You unbelievable. The most beautiful melody Naruto had ever heard began to echo through the valley. It was breathtaking. For a brief moment Naruto had almost lost his concentration. Like he had forgotten where he was at this moment. It was so surreal. The melody was unlike any he had heard. That feeling of lightness he had felt from his sensei's answer was the only thing he could compare it to. With that lightness came the power he needed. He could feel power emanating deep within him. It was almost unbelievable to think he had so much. Realization filling Naruto that he had this. With this strength he could stop this measly stream of water. Wind style. Giant Raisin Shield. As the mansion-sized disc of white chakra grew, Naruto could feel the push against the water. Even now it was still pushing him back. The angle which he pressed against it was directing the water away from the village. His jutsu was working. The only problem was that he was struggling physically to keep it steady. Come on. I won't give in. Rock. With one last push, Naruto gave every ounce of strength he had. The water finally subsided. His jutsu tore up the earth to create a sizable crevice for the water to flow into while the rest flowed down the river. All that remained was ankle-deep flooding. Splash. Naruto fell backwards, gasping for every breath. That took everything he had and then some. Now he just wanted to laugh but just couldn't catch his breath. Naruto. You did it. You actually did it. Sasami cheered. The wall we built is destroyed but the village is safe. Naruto beamed a grin. Team effort. It was finally over. The lengths I go to help some guy I fished out of the river, he groaned. Sometimes Naruto felt his life would be easier if he just walked away. Certainly would help him live longer. He felt Sasami lift him up so that he could rest his head on her lap, shivering when he felt her lips on his forehead. Then again, doing stupid stunts definitely had its perks. Naruto sat on a large stone that overlooked the village, stretching out his sore muscles. It was noon already on the following day. After sleeping for half a day he was roused by Sasami. Apparently the villagers were requesting that they leave the premises, immediately. It confused the hell out of him at first. They had saved their village and now they were getting the cold shoulder. It turned out Menma had spilled the truth on them about who they really were and that he was actually a part of the Shiin clan. The outcome was not pretty. Nan nearly brained Menma with a crossbow bolt before he managed to pluck it out of the air. Following this was a lot of rocks being thrown and cursing. Naruto couldn't help but laugh at it all. Even as Sasami dragged Menma behind her, the long-haired boy kept bowing and apologizing, swearing he would change his ways. With the Menma's former clan rounded up and incapacitated, the villagers could hand them over to the proper authorities. Plus, with the gold mine saved, there was hope to rebuild and grow again. Perhaps even seek to hire professionals to guard the village from future attacks. Things would be looking up for them. Menma himself had decided to take his new name as a sign of a new start, readily asking to join Naruto and Sasami on their journey. It was obvious that Naruto would accept. The road to a regret-free life was a long and arduous one after all, and misery loves company. Naruto smirked. It had only been a week since he had left on his journey alone, but it seemed like fate had decided he wouldn't be doing it alone. Really made things more interesting. Are you almost done, Menma? Naruto asked. Just, give me one moment. Menma grunted. And, that should be it. It seemed that Menma had collected every jutsu and ninja tool his clan members had on them. He was now getting his things in order for their journey, some of which were other musical instruments that his clan used. It would be interesting to see how he used them in the future. Perfect, let's head out then. Onto the land of wind. Naruto cheered, much to his companion's amusement. He made it 3 steps before stopping abruptly. Oh yeah. I completely forgot. I need your help with something, Menma. Help from me? Menma blinked. Sure. Naruto wrapped an arm around him. Excellent. You see, I've been struggling with learning to play the shakuhachi. That's it for part 8. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.